The garage was dim, sunlight slipping through the slats in pale strips. I hadn't meant to stop. I was just passing by, looking for the spare watering can. But something felt different. Off. The air was still, except for the faint hum of a lawnmower a few houses over, steady as a heartbeat. Then I saw it. The trunk, halfway open, like someone had stopped mid-sentence. I stepped closer. Inside, the suitcases were already packed, zipped neat and tight. One of Anna's favorite scarves peeked out, folded with care. Tags fluttered gently in the breeze, already tied on, like little flags announcing departure. I didn't touch anything. I didn't need to. It wasn't the forgetting that cut into me. It was the intention. These weren't last-minute plans. These were prepared, considered, and sealed. And not one word to me. The scent of warm pavement mingled with old car oil, wrapping around me like memory. I used to come out here to help them load for school trips. Fold beach chairs, remind them not to forget sun hats, but this time, I wasn't part of it. I backed away slowly, the silence around me tightening like a ribbon pulled just a little too hard. I didn't cry. I just stood there, hands folded in front of me, my fingertips pressing together until they ached. Because sometimes pain has to sit quietly before it dares to speak. The sunlight caught on the blue suitcase first. Anna's. Always blue. Then the gray one. Max's, his favorite. I stepped a little closer, pretending to adjust the shawl around my shoulders, though the morning was already too warm for it. I needed something for my hands to do, or else they might betray me. Each suitcase looked ready. Shiny new tags fluttered, bold letters, cheerful little phrases. Anna's read Adventure Time in pink. Max's had tiny airplanes on it, playful and bright, but mine wasn't there. There was no third suitcase, no extra tag with my name, the name they used to sing when they were little, the name they used to call out in the middle of the night after a bad dream. It stung in a place I hadn't touched in years. I pressed my palm flat against the side of the car, letting the heat soak into my skin. The driveway shimmered slightly in the sun. A paper napkin drifted across it, catching on the tire before tumbling away. Just like I had. I whispered my own name under my breath, just once, to remind myself I was still here. The door swung open, with a burst of laughter, and I stepped back instinctively. Anna came first, snapping her phone into selfie mode. Max followed, dragging the gray suitcase and grinning like this was the best day of summer. I stood just out of view, in the space, between the rosebush and the car mirror, watching. Anna tossed her hair over her shoulder and posed. Okay, one more, but tilt it this time. Max huffed as he tried to lift his suitcase, and Anna giggled. You're gonna throw out your back, Grandpa Jr. They didn't see me. Not at first. Then Anna looked up. Grandma, she called, cheerful and automatic. Come take a picture of us real quick. I walked over, slow and careful, my feet brushing bits of gravel. I took the phone. Say cheese, I said, my voice just steady enough. They smiled wide, perfect, joyful, ready for Instagram. I handed the phone. Back and smiled too, because that's what you do when someone hands you the camera instead of asking you to be in the photo. Inside, I felt like I was fading, not angry, just invisible, like someone looking in from behind a thick pane of glass, waving at a scene. No one realizes they're not part of anymore. I kept my smile even when my heart begged me not to. It wasn't a fake smile. It was one I'd worn so often it knew how to stay in place on its own. That sounds like a wonderful plan, I said. When Max explained the beach games. You'll have so much fun, Anna beamed. We're even going to have a bonfire and marshmallows. Her excitement was real, her eyes wide. I nodded. Don't forget to pack extra sunscreen. They nodded back, already drifting into the Yale. Next story. I stood on the driveway, dry dust clinging to my shoes, and I smiled. Not because I didn't feel left behind, but because there was no room for sadness when a child is happy. That's the rule, isn't it? Their joy had no space for my questions. So I held my breath, the kind you take when you're about to cry but don't. My throat ached with it, like during the sad part of a movie where you know what's coming and still hope you're wrong. They didn't notice. That's the part that hurts. They didn't notice how tightly I gripped my shawl, how I looked past them just so I wouldn't have to look through them. Max's whisper sliced through the moment. Like paper through skin. Didn't you tell Grandma? Anna frozen. Just for a second. She didn't answer. The car keys jingled in her hand, too loud in the quiet. Max looked at me, then down at his feet. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't need to. The pause told me everything. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mix-up or a plan that changed at the last minute. It was easier this way. For them. Not cruel. Just convenient. The sun was sharp now, bouncing off the windshield like glass splinters. I squinted, but I didn't move. Didn't speak. I let the silence stretch, wrapping around the edges of my tongue until even breathing felt like something I had to do quietly. I tasted metal in my mouth, like I'd bitten down on a lie. Anna cleared her throat. "We'll call you when we get there, okay?" I smiled, a soft, small lie in return. Of course, but we both knew that call would never come. The doors slammed shut one after the other. Cheerful thuds, like punctuation marks on a goodbye. No one said. Anna waved. Max gave a thumbs up. But no one hugged me. No one held on a second too long. No one whispered "love you" into my shoulder or smelled like sunscreen and goodbye. I raised my hand and waved back. I even smiled. They pulled away slowly, radio playing something upbeat I couldn't hear the words to. The car turned down the road, and I watched it until the tail lights blinked behind the hedges. My arms dropped to my sides. It wasn't the leaving that hurt. It was how clean the break was. Like I'd been lifted out of the moment, folded and shelved. They didn't even know I noticed. The dust from the tires danced in the air, tiny golden flecks in the sun. A cicada hummed low from the tree near the mailbox. And the house stood behind me, unchanged, as if it didn't just let go of the only pieces of me that still felt needed. The quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was too sharp, too deliberate. Like the world had paused to see what I'd do next. I turned slowly, hand finding the porch railing like muscle memory. The wood was warm and a little tacky from the heat. I leaned into it, not because I was tired, but because I needed something. To remind me I was still standing. The roses in the garden were starting to droop, their heads heavy with the weight of summer. I could smell them faintly, sweet and soft under the heat. I looked down at my hands. They smelled like lemon soap and thyme. The porch boards creaked under my steps as I walked back toward the door. No more car sounds, no more voices, just the click of the screen door behind me and the empty breath of a house that wasn't waiting for anyone anymore. I brushed a strand of hair from my face and whispered to no one, "I guess that's that." And the air didn't answer, just held me in its silence. The wicker chair creaked softly beneath me, molding to my shape like it always had. The porch was bathed in golden light, warm and thick, as if the sun itself had paused to linger a little longer that evening. I rested my palm on the armrest, feeling the ridges worn smooth over time. My fingers traced them without thinking, like muscle memory. The board still knew Anna's barefoot skips. I used to tell her not to run, but she'd laugh and spin, her curls bouncing as she twirled in circles. Max, sticky-faced with peanut butter, used to sit right by my feet, tugging on my hem for another cookie. They used to fill this porch with joy like a garden filled with blooms in spring. Now the swing creaked gently in the breeze, but it was the only sound beside the faint hum of cicadas. The laughter was still here, but it came in echoes, soft, distant, like music played from another room. I closed my eyes and listened, and for a moment I couldn't tell if I was part of the memory or just the one left keeping it alive. I was telling them about the time their mother got her foot stuck in the fence slats. We had to butter her ankle to slide it out. I chuckled as I spoke, but their eyes had that long blink I'd started recognizing lately. Like they were trying to be polite while wishing I'd finished sooner. Anna offered a quick, "Oh, that's funny," then looked at her phone. Max gave a small smile and shifted in his chair. No follow-up question. No, tell it again. I cleared my throat. Sorry, I've probably told that one too many times. No, it's fine, Anna said, but her voice was distant. I nodded. I was just remembering. The breeze lifted a corner of the newspaper beside me. I watched it flutter. I used to speak and they'd lean in. Now I found myself cutting stories short before they could look away. It wasn't unkindness, just weariness. My voice, once comfortable, had turned to background noise. The cicadas buzzed steadily, like a hush pressed over everything. I didn't finish the next story I'd meant to tell. I just sat back, let the shadows stretch across the porch, and stayed quiet. The rocking chair beside me sat still. Its empty slats caught the fading light, casting long stripes on the porch floor. Frank used to sit there, one leg crossed, pencil tapping gently against his crossword. He never filled in the squares until he was sure. "You rush it, you ruin it," he'd say with a wink. Even when we disagreed, he always put too much time in the casserole. We had a rhythm. A quiet filled with soft clinks of spoons and the scratch of pencil on paper. When we ran out of things to say, we'd hum, or just sit. The silence had a shape when Frank was in it. Since he passed, the silence lost its form. It didn't echo, it swallowed. I reached for my tea, the mug too cool now to drink, and sighed. I used to hold his hand during the weather forecast. Just a little squeeze when they predicted rain. Silly, but comforting. Now I speak out loud just to hear a voice. My own voice. I talk to the rose bush, to the clock, to the night air, because someone has to remember. And it seems I'm the only one left doing it out loud. Anna had asked Max to carry the basket, and I stepped forward instinctively. "I'll grab it," I said, already reaching. She smiled, but it was strained. "You don't need to hover, Grandma." Hover. The word dropped between us like a glass on tile. Not a yell, not even a harsh tone, just soft, too soft, like something you say when you've already redrawn the boundary. I let go of the basket. Max looked down, then picked it up without a word. I stepped back, hands clasped, unsure where to put them. I'd carried their fevers once, rocked them through. Chickenpox and tears. Now, my reaching hand felt like an intrusion. That one word, hover, changed everything. It didn't sting like an insult. It rewrote me. I stood in the fading light, porch shadows stretching toward the yard. The neighbor's hose hissed faintly, water spilling onto petunias. I whispered, "Sorry," though I don't think they heard. But I did, and that was enough to make the silence feel heavier than any shout. It started small. Anna stopped asking if I'd like to come to the recital. Max forgot to mention the camping trip until the photos were already posted. I told myself they were busy. I always told myself that. But somewhere along the way, I stopped being part of the planning. Even conversations started to pass around. Me, like a current curving gently around a stone. I wrapped my cardigan tighter around my shoulders. The fabric still smelled like rose detergent. I'd always liked that. One evening I told a story at dinner. Midway through, Anna checked her phone. Max interrupted with a joke. No one meant harm. But I felt myself shrinking in the space between their voices. It's not that they pushed me away, it's that they stopped looking for me. The crickets had replaced the cicadas now. The night came gently, not asking permission. I sat on the porch, warm light humming behind me, and realized being forgotten doesn't happen in one moment. It happens in 1,000 small silences. My fingers rested in my lap, curled gently, no longer busy. I used to braid Anna's curls until they bounced with joy. Used to shell peas with Max while he read knock-knock jokes off his cereal box. He'd barely get the punchline right, but I'd laugh anyway, because his smile made it worth it. Now, I sat with quiet hands and stories caught behind my teeth. There was no one asking for them anymore. No small heads resting in my lap. Just porch shadows and the scent of lavender lotion from my sleeves. I looked at the place where Max used to sit cross-legged on the floor, his questions endless and sticky, with jelly fingers. That spot was empty now, not just of him, but of the need for me. I wasn't pushed out. My place was simply thinned. I brushed my fingers together softly. The night air was cooler now, brushing past my cheek like a breath. And I stayed there, not waiting, just remembering, because even if no one asked, I still carried it all. Every laugh, every curl, every knock-knock joke. And sometimes I still whispered the answers back. I had only wanted to check the weather. Just a glance, really. See if the rain was coming early. Maybe get the roses covered before the petals bruised. The afternoon light, coming through the curtains, was pale, almost silvery, and the air had that heavy, pre-storm weight that makes your knees whisper before the clouds even open. I unlocked my phone and tapped the weather app. But before the forecast could load, the screen filled with Anna's face, her bright smile caught in a squint, sunlight spilling across her cheek, and behind her, the Eiffel Tower stretching into a sky too blue to believe. The photo sat right, there on the home screen like a souvenir I never touched. My thumb paused mid-swipe. I didn't move. The room, already quiet, somehow deepened in silence. Even the old floor creaked like it didn't want to interrupt. She hadn't told me she was going to Paris. Not a mention, no postcard tucked into the phone call. Just this digital glimpse, a bright, beautiful life, 1,000 miles away that I wasn't part of. The photos kept coming. At first, I told myself I was just curious. But each swipe brought another snapshot. One of Anna wrapped in a beach towel, sunglasses perched on her head. Another of Max, grinning beside a tropical drink, his teeth dyed a little red from whatever was in it. Then a group shot. Everyone, dressed up for dinner, standing under strings of cafe lights. They looked so happy, so full. I stared at them, and for a moment, I could almost hear their laughter. The kind that rings out easily without second thoughts or second glances. No one was missing from that picture. No one's absence shadowed the frame. They were whole. The TV was off, the room dim under a blanket of cloud cover, and the only sound was the soft ticking of the mantel clock. I sat still on the edge of the couch, phone balanced in my hand, heart slowly pulling itself in. Not one of them was looking for me. It was a joy, pure, uncomplicated joy, and that's what made it ache, that it belonged completely to someone else. They were all wearing the same shirts, bright yellow, with some kind of cartoon castle on the front, the kind families get when they're at a theme park, caught in the spell of togetherness. Even Max had on a matching hat, just slightly tilted, the brim casting a playful shadow across his forehead. I used to fold shirts like those, used to line them up in neat stacks in their drawers, smoothing the edges with my palm. I'd sniff, each one fresh from the dryer, and smile, imagining the trip they were about to take. Now, I wasn't even part of the laundry. They stood close in the picture, shoulders brushing, the shirts glowing in the soft light of evening sun. My thumb hovered over the screen. I should have felt happy for them, and part of me did. But the other part, the part that still remembered Max's baby curls and Anna's bedtime prayers, tightened. Outside, the leaves rustled, brushing softly against the window pane. A low thunder rumbled in the distance. Inside me, something rustled, too. Something that used to feel like home. The captions floated beneath each photo like soft declarations, family time, bonding moments, unforgettable trip. I read each one carefully, each word a tiny paper cut. Not once did my name appear. No, thanks to Grandma for watching the pets, or wish she could have come too. Nothing. Just smiles and sunsets and shared plates of pasta. I wasn't missed. The light in the room flickered slightly, clouds thickening outside. The hum of the fridge grew louder, like it was filling in the quiet with something vaguely alive. Next to me sat my mug of tea, now gone cool. Its scent, bergamot and something floral, drifted up faintly. I wrapped my sweater a little tighter. It's a strange thing, to be erased so quietly. Not out of anger, not out of cruelty, but by omission. I thought of birthdays, of homework help, of lunches packed with handwritten notes, and now, not even a single tag, no name, just a celebration I didn't even know had started. I told myself it would only be one more, just one more photo, one more caption. But hope has a way of turning small things into hunger. I wanted to see my name, even once, just a comment. A thank you, a miss you. But the scroll kept going, Max making sandcastles, Anna holding a pastry in both hands, laughing, a shot of fireworks bursting over a skyline I didn't recognize. The light in the pictures was golden, the kind that softens everyone's skin and makes happiness look easy. My eyes blurred, my chest pulled tight. I don't know if the tears started then or a moment later. They didn't come all at once. They came the way sadness does, quietly, like water soaking through fabric before you even feel the wet. Outside, the storm began to touch the windows, gentle taps, like fingers checking in. I blinked hard. My phone screen smudged with the oil of my thumb, still hovering. I set it down slowly, my breath shallow. Sometimes the worst goodbyes aren't spoken. They're scrolled through. The thunder cracked hard above the house, sudden and sharp, the kind that shakes something loose in your ribs. I stood. I didn't mean to. My legs just moved, carrying me toward the sliding door. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Rain. Maybe. Air. Proof that the world outside was still the same, even if everything inside had shifted. The door was open just a little, and cool air slipped in. It smelled like damp earth and a fresh start. But nothing inside me felt new. They hadn't pushed me out. Not really. They hadn't yelled or argued or drawn any clear line. They were just comfortable. Comfortable without me. And that, somehow, was colder. I stood there for a while, hand resting on the door frame, not holding it, just touching it. The rain began to fall steady now, like a song with no words. I used to be in the middle of things. Now, I was beside them. Watching from a room that had grown quiet, and the quiet was starting to feel permanent. The rain had been falling for hours, a soft, steady sound, like a lullaby I didn't ask for. The house felt too quiet, like the silence had stretched its arms wide and taken up every inch. I stood in the kitchen, palm resting on the edge of the counter. The refrigerator hummed behind me, a low, constant buzz. The overhead bulb cast a gentle gold over the table, warm but distant. My phone sat face down on the placemat. I hadn't meant to touch it, but grief is strange that way. It stirs your hands before your thoughts catch up. I turned it over slowly, thumb tracing the edge. My fingers hovered over the screen. Her number was still there. Sharon, 10 years untouched. It hadn't been deleted, just buried. I could hear Frank's voice in my head. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing. But the storm outside wasn't the only one rumbling. I tapped the number. Each ring felt like a dare I didn't want to win, but I stayed on the line anyway. Maybe muscle memory runs deeper than bitterness. Hello? It was the same clipped tone I remembered, like the word had a corner she'd never learned to smooth. But there was something else in it now, something softer, worn down by time. almost ended the call. My thumb hovered over the red button. But then she said my name. Not sharply, not like it was a problem, just gently, like it still belonged somewhere. Miriam? I cleared my throat. Hi, it's me. The sound of her breathing filled the space between us. Rain tapped gently against the window near the sink, and the curtain shifted just slightly with the wind. I held my mug close, ceramic, warm against my palms. The lemon scent of the dish soap still hung in the air, familiar and oddly comforting. She didn't ask why I called. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she was waiting too. For just a moment, I didn't feel alone. I felt seen. By someone who had once known my name before it turned into something people forgot to say out loud. There was a long pause, one of those full, breathing silences that doesn't feel empty. Then Sharon exhaled. It was quiet, but full, like a sigh. She'd been carrying for years. "You too?" she asked. Her voice cracked a little. I leaned against the counter, the cool tile pressing through my sleeve. "Yeah," I whispered. "Me too." We didn't say Frank's name. We didn't have to. It hung there between us, a ghost who'd left his shadow in both our kitchens. I'd braced myself for anger or awkwardness, but instead there was that strange, aching calm, like two songs in the same key, finally playing together again after all this time. "I wasn't sure if I should call," I said, brushing a finger over the rim of my mug. "I just didn't know who else might understand." She didn't answer right away. Then, "I get it, I really do." The clock on the wall ticked steadily, a rhythm against the low hum of the storm. We hadn't spoken in years, but somehow, our hurts still rhymed. And for once, I didn't have to explain the ache. We talked slowly, like old porch rockers swaying back and forth, creaky but steady. No apologies, no need. Just breaths shared in the space between words. I told her about the smell Frank's jacket still held. She told me how his handwriting made her cry sometimes. We didn't correct each other or draw lines around who loved him more. The years we'd spent avoiding each other, resenting each other, it all felt small in that moment. Not gone, but smaller. Like it didn't matter as much as I thought it did. "He hated lavender," she said suddenly. I smiled. And yet I used to put it in everything. We both laughed. Not loud, but real. We weren't his wives anymore, just two women. Two women who had once loved the same man and were left behind in different ways. The wind whispered through the crack in the windowsill. Somewhere deep in my memory, I could almost smell her lavender tea steeping. I didn't say I forgave her. And she didn't ask, but maybe we didn't need to. I don't even remember what made us laugh. Something silly Frank used to do, probably that face he'd make when he didn't want to take the trash out. Or the way he always mispronounced quinoa. But for a moment, I laughed. Really laughed. And it wasn't the bitter kind I'd grown used to. It was light, airy. I felt it in my chest like a balloon finally rising after sitting in the corner. Too long. Sharon chuckled on the other end. "He was such a pain sometimes," she said, her voice a little brighter. "Yeah," I replied. "But he was ours, wasn't he?" She didn't sound like the enemy anymore. Not the woman I'd spent years building a wall around. Just someone who knew exactly what I meant without me needing to explain it. The rain had softened into mist, just a faint hiss on the windows now. My tea had gone cold in my hands, but I didn't care. The house was still, as if it were listening. Too. Holding space for a small piece that had waited a very long time. When the call ended, I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel embarrassed for reaching out after all these years. I felt steadied. I set the phone down gently on the counter and leaned back, letting the silence fill the kitchen again. Only this time, it didn't feel so wide. Sharon had been part of a chapter I never wanted to reread. But maybe she belonged in the next one too. Some wounds don't need fixing. They just need someone else to say, I know. I stared out the kitchen window. The rain had stopped, leaving behind that soft hush that settled over everything. Midnight had arrived without fanfare, wrapping the house in quiet. The overhead light still glowed above the sink, casting soft gold over the dishes I didn't bother to finish. I wasn't healed. But I wasn't alone, and sometimes that's enough. A soft place to land after a long fall. Her voice came through the speaker, soft at first, then rising with that unmistakable twist of mischief I hadn't heard in decades. You sound older, she teased, but somehow still like you're about to correct my grammar. I laughed before I could stop myself. It surprised me. The sound. It had been a while since something reached in and tugged a smile out of me that easily. I probably will, I replied, smiling into my coffee. There was something youthful in her voice, brighter than I remembered. Not youthful like age, youthful like freedom. Like she'd finally stopped tiptoeing around all the versions of herself that weren't allowed to be loud. I cleaned the baseboards this morning, she said, like an actual adult, and then I sat down and ate ice cream for breakfast. So, balance. The birds outside her window chirped faintly, just barely picked up by the speaker. And for a second, I pictured her kitchen, lace curtains glowing in the sun, the smell of coffee and lemon cleaner hanging in the air. It felt strange. And right, like finding an old photo that still made you smile. She said it like she was ordering dessert. Let's go somewhere stupid and sunny. I blinked. What? You heard me. Bright sun, bad drinks, matching hats. There was a pause. I held my breath without meaning to. 10 years of carefulness, pressed against the inside of my ribs. I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't want to, but because saying yes felt like tearing through a curtain I'd lived behind too long. I glanced at the calendar. Nothing written there, no birthdays, no appointments, no excuses. I exhaled. Okay, I said. Let's do it. Sharon didn't gasp. She just chuckled, like she already knew I would. Good, I'll pack my anti-wrinkle cream. You bring the sass. The sunlight across the kitchen table grew warmer, and the faint ticking of the wall clock kept pace with something new inside me. It didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a dare. And this time, I chose me. She had points. Lots of them. Leftover from a life she said she was done waiting to live. I had a passport tucked behind my birth certificate, still valid, still quietly reminding me there was a world beyond my front porch. Are you sure? I asked. Don't ask, she replied. Just pick a window seat. So we did. In 20 minutes, it was all booked. No fuss, no debate. Balcony room, midship, some island I couldn't pronounce but already loved the idea of. I haven't. Worn a sundress since 2009, I said, glancing toward the drawer where they slept, folded and forgotten. Well, wake them up, she laughed. We're borrowing time from our younger selves. The breeze pushed through the open window, fluttering the curtain just enough to make the light dance on the floor. A spoon clinked gently in my mug as I stirred my coffee again out of habit, not need. I used to second-guess everything, but not this. This felt like reclaiming a little piece of the woman I used to be, before life quieted her down. We didn't talk like wives, or mothers, or caretakers. We spoke like women, just women. Me in my kitchen, Sharon in hers. Our phones rested on cluttered tables surrounded by scribbled notes and reading glasses missing one screw. We could book massages, she said. I snorted. And get roped into a timeshare tour? I said messages, not mistakes, she laughed. We were piecing ourselves back together with jokes, pauses, and the kind of honesty that doesn't require prefaces. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone was forgotten at the edge of the photo. No one had invited us to their plans. So we made our own. I reached for a pen, scribbled something that didn't need remembering, and smiled at the scent of citrus cleaner still lingering on the table. It wasn't about being bold. Not exactly, but it felt like it. We couldn't decide between shrimp buffet or pasta night. Both, Sharon asked. Let's live a little. We giggled. I mean, really giggled. The kind that sneaks up on you, takes over your breath, and shakes. Lose something joyful that's been stuck for years. Okay, I laughed, wiping the corner of my eye. But I'm not wearing the snorkeling goggles. Oh, you will, she warned. And I'll get the photos to prove it. We weren't planning a trip. Not really. We were making room. For joy. For ridiculousness. For the freedom to be silly. Again. Outside her window, I could hear music playing faintly. Something easy, something bright. It matched the golden glow outside my own, where the sunlight turned the porch rails the color of butter. For once, the conversation wasn't heavy. It wasn't about what was missing. It was about what we were building, together, loudly, with laughter as our travel agent. The call ended, and I didn't move right away. I sat there staring at the email confirmation glowing quietly on my phone. Screen. My name was on the ticket. My name. The house had gone still again. No voices, no clatter, just the soft hum of quiet and a breeze curling the edge of the calendar, still stuck in July. The sunlight warmed the wood grain beneath my fingers, and for the first time in a long while, the silence didn't press against me. It held me. This wasn't running away. It wasn't a grand escape, it was the beginning. Two women, once background characters in everyone else's stories, had decided to sail forward, together. And for once, we weren't asking permission. The moment the ship rumbled beneath my feet, something deep inside me stirred, not fear, not nerves, just motion. I stepped forward slowly, my hand reaching before the rest of me caught up. The railing was warm under my palms, kissed by the afternoon sun and smoothed by countless other. Hands before mine, I curled my fingers around it like it was a thread. A guide, a permission slip. The chatter of the deck filled the air, families laughing, kids dragging wet towels, someone somewhere already talking about dinner. But all I heard was the wind. It tugged at the edge of my cardigan, playful and firm. Frank used to tease me about that cardigan, said it made me look like I ran a church potluck. Even the kids used to wrinkle their noses and say I looked too old-fashioned, but I wore it anyway. And now, the breeze didn't ask me to change. It pulled at me gently, not to undo me, but to lift me, to wrap me in something new. For the first time, I let it. The ocean didn't ask me questions, didn't care about RSVP lists or who had texted last. It just was. Layer after layer of blue stretched out in every direction, rippling like it was, breathing, deep, calm, steady. The wind brought its scent straight to my face, sharp, clean, a little wild. I could taste the salt on my lips before I even noticed I was smiling. I stood near the railing again, this time letting my arms relax, my shoulders dropping. There were kids playing somewhere behind me, squeals and splashes, but the sea gave them room to shout without taking anything from me. The waves didn't flinch at my silence, didn't treat it like something awkward that needed filling. They just kept rolling, and in their rhythm, I felt a kind of welcome. No one here expected me to apologize for taking up space. I took a deep breath, and with every inhale, the silence that used to feel heavy began to feel whole. Sharon tossed her head back and laughed. Not the polite kind of laugh you save for strangers or dinner tables. It was full, loud, hers. I watched her, stunned for just a second. Her eyes squinted shut, her drink sloshed dangerously close to the rim, and her shoulders bounced with the kind of joy you can't fake. It wasn't about something funny. It was about release. So I laughed too. Not because I got the joke, but because suddenly I wasn't afraid of being noticed. I wasn't sitting on the edge, waiting for the right moment to join in. I was already there, already loud, already welcome. I haven't laughed like that in years, she wheezed, fanning herself with a napkin. Me neither. I said, still chuckling, wiping at the corner of my eye. And I didn't even mean to. The deck around us shimmered with late sun. Fruity. Drinks glowed like little gems. People snapped photos, capturing their own versions of joy. And there we were, just two women, laughing for no one but ourselves. We were settling into chairs near the back of the deck when I realized something strange. No one looked twice when I asked where the napkins were. No one sighed when I double-checked the drink menu or took a beat longer to order. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't tagging along. I was just here. Sharon passed me a plate of shrimp skewers. Try these. You'll thank me later. I already do, I said, smiling. The music playing from the speaker near the pool was soft, upbeat, something familiar but not distracting. A breeze carried the scent of grilled seafood from the snack bar, mixing with sunscreen and salt. Looked around at the families, the couples, the solo travelers. Everyone belonged, including me. I hadn't been added in as an afterthought. This trip wasn't a favor. It was a choice. My choice. That changed everything. The ship rocked gently, its rhythm syncing with something steady inside me. The ocean stretched out forever, the kind of endless that doesn't intimidate, but invites. Sharon stood beside me, sipping something cold, quiet now. Neither of us needed to fill the air. The absence I used to carry, the one they left when they stopped calling, stopped including, stopped needing, it used to feel like a hole. An echo I couldn't stop hearing. But now, it felt different. The silence had a shape. It framed something new. Not a wound. A window. There was room here. For air. For laughter. For things I hadn't dared to imagine myself reaching for. I looked at Sharon. She met my eyes, and for once, we didn't need to say anything. I turned back to the water. The breeze played with my hair, and I let it. The shore had long since disappeared, just a smudge in the distance now, dissolving into the sky. I stood at the edge of the deck, hands loose, heart strangely still. I thought I'd feel grief, but I didn't. I felt spacious. I didn't need an apology, not from them, not anymore. I didn't need to hear, "We should have invited you," or "We didn't mean to leave you out." I had this sea air, this sun. This breeze wraps itself around me like a gentle ribbon. Sharon was somewhere behind me, probably ordering another drink or asking someone about trivia night. I didn't rush to find her. I stayed, letting the wind comb through the edges of my cardigan, letting it hum through the flag above like a lullaby for a different kind of ending. No closure needed, no permission either, just me, the ocean, and this steady, soft knowing. This time, I wasn't left behind. I was moving forward. We poured the cider slowly, the bubbles rising with soft, fizzing sounds that made us giggle like girls sneaking champagne. The flutes were plastic, thin, a little wobbly, but we clinked them together like they were fine crystals. Sharon raised hers and said, "To us, queens of absolutely nothing." I laughed, "And rulers of absolutely everything." The balcony. Lights blinked gently above us, casting warm halos along the rail. The sea rolled below in slow, soothing breaths. I leaned against the railing, the air warm but forgiving, the kind that doesn't ask anything of you, just lets you be. Sharon had draped a shawl around her shoulders. At first glance, I recognized the stitching. It was mine, from years ago, a faded blue paisley I hadn't seen since before Frank passed. I didn't ask where she'd found it. I didn't need to. It looked better on her anyway. She caught me staring and raised a brow. "What?" "Nothing," I said, smiling into my glass. "Just nice." It really, truly was. We signed up for trivia on a whim. The lounge deck was already humming when we got there. Couples scattered across tables, some in sandals, others dressed like they were dining with royalty. We joined a group with a couple from Ohio, Linda and Craig, and a young honeymooning pair who couldn't stop holding hands. "Team name?" Craig asked. Sharon shrugged. "Two hot messes?" I snorted. "Make it International Waters 0. Responsibilities." They laughed. Just like that, we belonged. Nobody asked how we were related. Nobody looked puzzled when we introduced ourselves simply as Miriam and Sharon. There were no whispers about whose room name came first or why. We didn't mention our husbands. We were just part of the game. Soft jazz drifted in from a speaker behind the bar. Our napkins kept flapping in the breeze, so I tucked mine under my water glass. Sharon elbowed me gently when I got the answer to a literature question. "Right. Still got it," she whispered. And for once, the past didn't need explaining to. Matter, we just were, and it was enough. She took a sip of cider, then said, "Did I ever tell you about the time Frank got stuck in a hammock?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" She grinned. "Legs up in the air like a goat on a trampoline. Couldn't get out for 10 minutes. I burst out laughing, sharp and sudden. "Frank? Frank, who refused to sit on beanbags because he said they were undignified?" Sharon nodded. "The very same. And when I offered to help him, he said, 'This is between me and the laws of physics.'" I had to put my glass down. I was laughing too hard to hold it. The flickering lantern beside us danced light over our legs. The ocean shimmered silver. Under the moon, and the air felt cool and clean. But it was the story, his ridiculous flailing legs I could suddenly picture, that wrapped around me like a blanket. It didn't feel like jealousy. Not even a loss. It felt like finding a new photo of someone you've loved your whole life, even if it wasn't yours. I don't know what tipped us over. Maybe it was the cider, maybe the ridiculous trivia answers, maybe just the weight of joy, catching us both off guard. But at some point, we laughed. Really laughed. We held onto the railing, both of us doubled over, gasping for breath. Sharon clutched her stomach, wheezing. "I swear if I pee myself, you're explaining it to housekeeping." I could barely get words out. "Not it!" The stars above us blinked like they were laughing too. The ship breathed underneath us, rocking us gently in rhythm. Somewhere far off, I could still hear the hush of waves, but it was in the background. "Now!" My belly ached in the best way, like it used to when the kids would gang up on me during tickle fights. The kind of laugh that came from deep down, where everything really lives. Tears filled my eyes, not from grief, from fullness, from remembering that laughter this really still lived inside me. And tonight, it had come all the way out. We didn't talk about Frank that night, or the decades between us, or the hollow spaces we both carried, where people used to live and now only memory remained. We didn't have to. The pain was there, but quiet. It sat politely between us, not demanding anything. And for once, we didn't pick it up. We just let it sit. Sharon reached over once, tapped her flute gently against mine. "You know," she said, "no one else would get this." I nodded. They'd try, but it wouldn't land. It was true. This kind of joy only blooms between women who've held the same shadow, who've stood in the same quiet room and wondered if anyone remembered they were there. But tonight, we weren't carrying the shadow. We were dancing around. It, hands free, arms wide. The candle beside us flickered, its scent warm and citrusy. Our chairs were pulled close, our glasses nearly empty. And for a few hours, we were just two women, alive, present, full. Nothing missing, nothing owed. After Sharon went inside, I stayed. The candle had burned low. The breeze had cooled. And the music from inside had faded to a distant murmur. I leaned against the railing, looking out over the water. The stars had come out in full bloom, thousands of them scattered across the sky like glitter on black velvet. I wrapped my arms around myself, not from cold, but comfort. The night wasn't grand. It wasn't dramatic, but it was mine. Entirely mine. I tucked it into memory like a photograph slid into a worn locket, one I'd carry close to my chest, hidden but always there. It had been a long time since I'd had a night worth keeping. And this one? This one, I'd never forget. The scent of the sea lingered, sharp and clean. I turned the knob quietly, letting the door close with a soft click behind me. And for once, I didn't feel like I was closing the night out. I felt like I was taking it with me. The sunlight had just started brushing across the edge of the bed, casting that soft golden hue that made the whole cabin feel like it belonged to a postcard. I cradled my mug in both hands, letting the warmth soak into my fingers. The sheets were still crisp behind me, untouched on one side. I wasn't expecting anything, certainly not a message. The phone buzzed once beside the coffee pot, just a small sound, but it broke the morning stillness like a pebble dropped into still water. I picked it up slowly. Anna's name blinked on the screen. The text was short. "You're on a cruise? With her?" I stared at it for a second, reading the words, but also reading everything they didn't say. It wasn't just a surprise. It was a disruption. The gulls cried faintly outside, a call I'd grown used to since boarding. The waves hummed against the hull like a steady breath. And now, here was this tiny sentence. Not a lifeline, not a net, but a ripple. One that reached farther than I expected. The judgment didn't bother me. What caught me off guard was the fact that she noticed it all. For so long, I'd moved through the world quietly, stocking the pantry, folding sheets, smiling in the background of their selfies. No one really asked where I was unless something needed doing. But this little message? It meant she'd seen me. Maybe not entirely. Maybe not how I wanted to be seen. But still, seen. I turned toward the window, the curtain, rustling gently with the sea breeze. The ceramic mug in my hand tapped softly against the edge of the table, a tiny chime against the silence. "She's surprised," I murmured to myself, lips curling into a half-smile. Good. I didn't need applause, but it was something to know I could still cause a ripple. Even quiet people shift the tide sometimes. The more I looked at it, her message, the clearer it became. This wasn't about missing me. Not really. It was about me leaving the frame. They'd drawn a role for me without asking. Silent, steady, always home. The one who said it's fine and meant it. The one who kept the phone charged just in case someone needed help with a flight delay or a soup recipe. But here I was, on a ship, with Sharon, laughing, resting, living. The cruise ticket hadn't just reserved a room, it broke something open. I stood, stretching a little as the sun climbed higher. Its light spilled over the floorboards now, warm and bold. The cabin smelled like fresh linen and sunscreen, scents of beginnings. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was simply no longer playing the part they'd quietly scripted. For me, and that, I realized, was the real disruption. Sometimes, doing something for yourself doesn't just change your day. It rewrites the assumptions of everyone who thought they knew your story. I didn't text her back right away. I let the moment be what it was, mine. The coffee was still hot. I wrapped both hands around the chipped mug, the one with the little ship logo and a barely there crack down the side. The steam rose gently, curling around my face like a familiar whisper. I sipped slowly, letting the warmth move through me, settling deep. There was something deeply satisfying in the stillness of it all, in the fact that I didn't owe anyone an explanation for this happiness. Sharon's soft laughter floated through the balcony door, and somewhere down the corridor I could hear the faint rhythm of sandals against deck flooring. The ship, alive, in its own gentle way, rocked slightly beneath us. I didn't need to rush. I'd spent a lifetime responding right away, fixing, managing, smoothing. This morning, I let the quiet speak first, and it said, "You're allowed." I typed it slowly. 7. Words, no embellishments, no caveats, just what I meant. Yes, I needed the fresh air. That was all. No "hope you understand," no layered backstory, no performative cheerfulness. Just truth, plain, light, and open, like the breeze tugging softly at my hair through the open balcony door. The light had fully filled the cabin now, brushing across the small table, turning everything gold and honest. I read the message once, then send it. No overthinking. It felt good. Like unclenching a fist you didn't realize was tight. Somewhere, beyond the wall, someone dropped a fork and laughed. A gull cried again in the distance, its voice high and sure. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for a moment. It was just 7 words, but for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself in order to be understood. Was clear, and sometimes clarity is enough. They thought they'd caught me in something scandalous, some secret vacation, some reckless decision, but what they really discovered was something else entirely. I'm not done living, not even close. I can still stretch, still choose something unexpected, still book a cruise with someone who used to be my sore spot and is now my sunshine. I don't need to be background, not anymore. The text wasn't about me being wrong. It was about them being surprised that I still get to become something new. And maybe, if they're paying attention, they'll begin to understand that I'm not just the soft voice on the end of the phone waiting for permission. I can move. I can change. I can go to sleep under stars I've never seen and wake up to a sunrise that has nothing to do with anyone's schedule but mine. The balcony view opened wide before me, water stretching to forever. And somewhere deep inside me, I was stretching too. The garden looked just as it always had, familiar and soft. The hydrangeas drooped under their own bloom, their weight somehow comforting. A few bees danced lazily between blossoms, carrying out their quiet work like they always had. I spread the floral tablecloth slowly, smoothing each wrinkle like it mattered. Then I set 2 places, not 1. 2 cups, 2 plates. The sugar bowl, center stage, just the way Anna liked it, with the little silver spoon resting against the porcelain edge. The breeze tugged gently at the corners of the cloth, lifting it like a breath. I tucked the edge under the vase and looked at the chairs. Mine was easy to place. The other, I hesitated before pulling it out. It felt strange. Not because of what I was doing, but because of what it meant. Setting 2 places wasn't just an invitation. It was a statement, a quiet one, dressed in garden light and polite dishes, and somehow that felt like the bravest thing I'd done in years. She came. Not all at once, not with a smile, but with steps that slowed the closer she got to the patio. Anna's head was tilted down, and her arms stayed close to her sides, like she wasn't sure she had the right to take up space here. I didn't speak. I just watched her. She didn't meet my eyes. Not yet. But she looked around, at the table, at the cloth, at the 2 cups, and slowly sat down. Her shoulders weren't squared in defiance. They hung gently, like she'd set something down before walking outside. The garden didn't react. The bees kept buzzing, the leaves rustled above us, and the sunlight stayed warm. But something small cracked open in me. Not a wound, but hope. Poured her tea without asking, set the cup just right. She glanced at it and gave the tiniest nod. It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. I didn't plan my words. I just let them come. "I want you to know," I said quietly, "that being left out didn't just hurt. It was hollow." Anna's hand paused above her cup. "I know you didn't mean it like that. I'm not accusing you, but silence. Silence isn't peace. It's the distance." She didn't interrupt. She just kept looking at the steam rising from her cup, like it held something she needed to see. I kept going. I wasn't upset that you had joy. I was upset that you forgot to leave a space for me in it. That cruise wasn't about a vacation. It was about choosing myself for once. A bee hovered near the napkin holder. Neither of us flinched. I'm not trying to make you feel bad, I added softly. I just wanted you to know where I disappeared to. Not out of anger. Just self-preservation. I took a sip and set the cup back down with care, and for once I wasn't speaking for permission. I was speaking for peace. She looked down at her lap, her fingers pulling slightly at the hem of her dress, just like she did when she was small and trying to understand a word too big for her age. She didn't say anything, but her silence wasn't sharp this time. It wasn't laced with resistance or retreat. It was still, like soil after a hard rain. She looked up for just a second, not all the way into my eyes, but close enough for me to see something shifting behind hers. Her lips parted, then closed again. No defense, no excuse. Just listening. The shadows on the patio stretched long across the stone. Birds chirped softly above us, the rhythm of nature falling in sync with the quiet between us. The teapot was nearly empty now, but it was still warm. I poured a little more into each of our cups, the soft clink of porcelain steadying the moment. It didn't feel like she was shutting me out. It felt like she was trying to find the door back in. She touched her cup with the gentlest motion, 2 fingers resting against the rim, like she wasn't sure if it would hold. That's when I saw her. Not the grown woman who had forgotten me. Not the daughter who had distanced herself. I saw the little girl who used to climb into bed, with me after a nightmare. The one who cried when I cut her sandwich the wrong way, but always finished it anyway. And just like that, the ache inside me softened. I'd been carrying the pain of being left behind, of being invisible in the chapter she wrote without me. But now, in this still garden, with petals drifting gently from the hydrangeas and her eyes soft with something that looked like effort, I saw her not as my wound, but as for my daughter, and maybe, just maybe, we were both learning how to return to one another without breaking. For years I feared this, fearing that if I said the truth, my real truth, it would snap something between us. That honesty would cut the last thread we had left. But nothing snapped. Something gave, softly, like a ribbon being untied. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw it, not guilt, not shame, but recognition. The kind that comes when someone finally sees the whole picture, not just the part that suited them. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. We didn't leap into each other's arms. We didn't cry or make promises. But the space between us, once tight with hurt, now felt wide enough for something else to bloom. The sun had started easing into its golden hour. The garden was quieter now. Even the bird song had softened. She placed her cup back onto the saucer with care. And in that gentle sound, I heard what I'd waited years for. The sound of something not breaking, but opening. It slipped out quietly, tucked, between a water bill and a flyer for window cleaning services. Bright blue corners curled like it had traveled just a little too far. I almost missed it. Max's handwriting hadn't changed. Still uneven, still leaning uphill like it was trying to keep from falling over. Just one sentence, scrawled across the back. Wish you'd come next time. No explanation. No apology. I stood in the kitchen, mug still steaming, the autumn breeze threading through the cracked window. The light came in soft and gold, making the countertop glow like it had something to say. I turned the postcard over, reading it again, slower. It felt like a feather falling after the birds already gone, not heavy enough to matter, but not nothing either. And yet, I didn't cry. I didn't ache, I just held it there in the morning stillness, the scent of coffee wrapping around me like memory, and thought, too late, but maybe not empty. The smile came without struggle, not tight, not sharp, no salt in it. Just soft. I stood at the fridge and reached for a magnet, the one shaped like a seashell from a beach I never visited. I pinned the postcard beside an old cookie recipe I'd never actually made and a photo of Sharon mid-laugh, half blurry and perfect. Not because I was waiting for more, just because it belonged somewhere, and that was enough. The fridge hummed behind me like a quiet yes. Sunbeams stretched across the kitchen floor, catching the edges of a worn rug. Outside, the leaves rustled, a sound I used to find lonely, but now sounded like a hymn. Max had sent a postcard, not a door, not a hand reaching out, just a pebble tossed into a lake I no longer needed to cross. And still, I smiled, not to prove I'd healed, but because maybe I already had. I used to write back right away, even when there. Wasn't much to say, just to feel included, to remind them I was still here, to keep my name somewhere near the edge of their attention. But this time, I didn't reach for a pen, didn't open my messages, didn't rehearse words. Instead, I let the kettle hum gently behind me, steam rising in lazy curls. The table was clear except for a worn paperback and a train ticket tucked halfway inside, Sharon and me, bound for mountains. I folded my cardigan over the chair. The air inside the kitchen was still, but not empty. Sometimes not replying is its own kind of reply. A language that doesn't need punctuation to make sense, and silence, when it's no longer about being forgotten, can feel like the kindest answer of all. There they were, 2 train tickets, neat and full of promise. I'd placed them on the bureau the night before, right next to the lavender sachet and the old cedar drawer that still stuck when I opened it too far. We were heading to the Rockies, not because someone invited us, not because we were filling anyone else's space, but because we chose it. Sky, trees, crisp air, and the kind of laughter that asks nothing of you but to show up. No cruise itineraries. No group photos I wasn't part of. No chairs saved, last minute out of guilt. Just us. I'd packed a few shawls, a couple of paperbacks, and my favorite scarf that still smelled faintly of rosewood. The sunlight through the lace curtain turned, the room golden and soft. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was going somewhere to escape. I felt like I was going somewhere to arrive. I used to think healing meant finding my seat again at the big table. The loud one, the crowded one, the one where I smiled a little too wide and waited to be asked something that mattered. Now? Now, I prefer a smaller table, 2 chairs, 1 teacup is already steaming. 1 spot saved, not out of obligation, but joy. The postcard from Max didn't hurt. It wasn't a bridge back. It was a reminder of how far I'd come. A little echo of what used to be. But here, in this quiet morning light, with the window fogged slightly from the breeze, I didn't ache for what wasn't. I felt full, because sometimes home isn't where everyone is. It's where someone truly sees you and stays. There was a time I waited for the call, the knock, the late arriving text that might say, "We forgot to tell you, but we meant to." Now, I wake up with plans already made. Not because someone sent an itinerary, but because I wrote my own. The calendar isn't filled with other people's birthdays. It holds mine. The house hums with late morning light. A bird hops across the windowsill branch, its feathers ruffled, like it's braving something new. By the door, my suitcase is zipped, train ticket ready. No one told me to go, but no one needed to. I've traded invitations for intentions, and what I have now, this self-made joy, it fits me better than anything that ever arrived with guilt or delay. I'm not waiting, I'm living, and that, at last, is enough.